We all carry wounds. Some are loud, visible, unforgettable. Others are quiet, buried deep beneath our smiles, masked by our routines, but always there. And if we're not careful, those wounds start to define us. They shape how we love, how we trust, how we protect ourselves. The truth is, life will hand us people who disappoint us, betray us, break parts of us we thought were safe. But what we do after that, that's where our real power lives. Because healing doesn't begin with time, it begins with truth. And the first truth we need to confront is that forgiveness isn't weakness. It's a decision, a fierce, quiet act of strength that sets us free, without asking permission. In this episode, we begin with the hardest and most misunderstood step of all. Let's talk about what it means to forgive, but never forget. Part 1. Forgive but don't forget. There's a raw truth most people never admit: if you're still carrying bitterness, rage, or quiet resentment, thinking it gives you strength, you're mistaken. What you're really doing is giving someone who hurt you permission to live in your mind, rent-free. Forgiveness isn't about them. It never was. It's about you, reclaiming your peace, taking back your power one breath at a time. People often confuse forgiveness with weakness, like letting go means excusing the pain or welcoming it back into your life. But that's not forgiveness. That's denial. And we don't do denial here. Years ago, I had a close friend. We'll call him Alex. I trusted him with something deeply personal, thinking our bond was unbreakable. But a week later, I heard my truth distorted and spread, twisted into something ugly, used to damage my character. The betrayal cut deep. I wasn't just angry, I was wounded, humiliated, spinning in a loop of regret and anger. For months, maybe even years, I carried that resentment like armor, believing it made me stronger. But it only made me tired. Until one day, I came across a quote that shook me. Resentment is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. That was it. That was my wake-up call. Alex had moved on, probably without a second thought. But I was still bleeding. And I realized, it was never about punishing him, it was me, trapped in my own emotional prison. So, I did the thing I thought I'd never do: I forgave him. Not through a dramatic conversation or a handwritten letter. I didn't give him the satisfaction of hearing my closure. I forgave him in silence, quietly. For my own sake, I laid down that weight. But make no mistake, I didn't forget. Because forgetting would be like pretending the lesson never happened. And that lesson? It taught me who to trust, how to protect my peace, and how to never make the same mistake again. Forgiveness isn't letting someone off the hook. It's taking yourself off the hook they hung you on. The Stoics said power lies in mastering your emotions. And forgiveness, real, intentional forgiveness, is the most powerful emotional mastery of all. It means saying, I refuse to let your actions write my story. But not forgetting? That's how you keep your boundaries sharp. That's how you remember the storm without letting it drown you again. Forgiveness is your release. Not forgetting is your protection. The scar stays, not to haunt you, but to teach you. It reminds you of what you overcame, and what you deserve moving forward. So forgive because your soul deserves lightness. But don't forget, because your future deserves wisdom. That's not weakness. That's strength in its purest form. And that's where your healing truly begins. Part 2. Limit their access. There comes a point when you have to be brutally honest with yourself. Not everyone deserves a front row seat in your life. It doesn't matter if they're family, longtime friends, co-workers, or people who once meant everything to you. If they drain you, if they disrespect your boundaries, if they bring more noise than peace, then it's time to limit their access. Not out of cruelty, but out of necessity. Because your emotional energy is a sacred resource. And it's not infinite. I used to be a people pleaser. The kind who said yes before anyone finished asking. I gave out pieces of myself like candy, my time, my energy, my patience. I picked up the phone at midnight to listen to the same complaints for the 100th time. I bent over backward for people who couldn't even meet me halfway. I gave them access to my inner world, and they walked through it with muddy shoes. And after every interaction, I felt smaller, emptier, like I was slowly evaporating. Until one day, I had to stop and ask, what am I doing? Why am I letting these people take so much from me when they give so little in return? That moment changed everything. I realized I didn't need to cut everyone off. I just needed to restructure the guest list. Not everyone deserves to be in your inner circle. And no, you don't need a dramatic breakup or a big speech. Sometimes, the most powerful shift happens quietly. You stop answering every call. You stop offering explanations. You become unavailable to chaos. Maybe that one friend who always unloads their drama starts to notice you're not so quick to engage. Instead of getting pulled in, you respond with calm detachment. That sounds tough. What do you plan to do about it? And suddenly, they're left with the mirror of their own chaos. Or maybe it's that family member who constantly criticizes your life, your choices, your dreams. You don't argue anymore. You nod, smile politely, and keep your vision to yourself. They lose power when they have no access to your truth. It's not cold, it's wise. It's not harsh, it's healthy. The truth is, you are the gatekeeper of your peace. Your life is your temple. And not everyone gets to walk freely through sacred ground. Think of your life like a layered fortress. The most trusted ones stay close to your fire, where warmth and wisdom are shared. The rest, they stay on the outskirts. Some might call you distant. Some might say you've changed. And they'd be right. You're no longer available for relationships that only take and never give. You're no longer accessible to anyone who doesn't respect your energy. That's not selfish, that's survival. That's self-respect. And yes, it will make some people uncomfortable. But ask yourself, do you want to be liked by everyone? Or do you want to live in peace, surrounded by people who genuinely value you? It's okay to reassign people in your life. Some are meant to be chapters, not permanent characters. Some are meant to watch from the crowd, not stand center stage. When you learn to limit their access, something powerful happens. You reclaim your time, your clarity, your balance. You stop reacting, and you start leading. And those who truly care about you, they'll understand. The others, let them misunderstand. Because the truth is, when you finally start valuing yourself, the wrong people will leave, and the right ones will step forward. That's how you protect your peace. That's how you build a life where your energy isn't just scattered, it's sacred. Part 3. Use humor to disarm them. Sometimes, the most unexpected way to take back control is by doing what toxic people never see coming. You smile. Not in surrender, but in strategy. Because toxic people thrive on control. They need tension. They crave drama. They wait for your defensiveness, your outrage, your wounded silence. But when you respond with humor, light, clever, unshakable humor, you take the script they wrote for you and rip it in half. They expect you to crumble, to explain, to argue. But when you laugh, when you turn their insult into irony, they lose their audience. Their show falls flat. I once worked with someone who made it their mission to criticize everything, from your productivity to the way you drank your coffee. They made snide comments not to improve anything, but to feel superior. One day, they walked by my desk, a desk full of scattered notes, ideas, coffee cups, and color-coded chaos, and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "Wow, your desk looks like a tornado hit it. How do you even function?" I looked up, smiled, and said, "I know, right? Einstein had the same problem. I guess I'm on track to be a genius." Everyone laughed, and just like that, their weaponized sarcasm turned into a failed punchline. They never brought it up again. That's the power of humor. When you don't take their bait seriously, when you don't absorb their negativity, they lose their grip. Humor isn't about dismissing the weight of the situation. It's about refusing to carry it. It's about signaling, without a single drop of rage, that you're untouchable. But here's the key, your humor must be warm, never cutting. If your joke is cruel or too sharp, you've lowered yourself to their level. You don't want to wound them. You want to disarm them. Think of humor as a velvet glove over iron clarity. It softens the moment, but the message still lands. Like when someone constantly interrupts you, talking over your thoughts during a meeting or conversation. Instead of snapping, you can calmly say, "Wow, I didn't realize this was a duet, but I'll take the next solo now." It's respectful, pointed, and it flips the power without a fight. This technique works wonders when toxic people try to manipulate you emotionally. You know the ones. "I guess you're too busy for real friends now." Or, "Wow, must be nice not to care anymore." That's when you gently lean into the absurdity of it all and say, "You caught me. I've been rehearsing for the role of world's worst friend, and I'm finally getting into character." They won't know whether to laugh, retreat, or rethink their whole approach. Either way, you've diffused their weapon. Humor reminds you that you don't owe anyone a performance. You don't have to engage in conflict just because it's offered to you. When you use humor deliberately, you become unpredictable, and toxic people hate unpredictability. It shakes the control they thought they had. But most importantly, using humor allows you to maintain your peace. It's a sign that you don't take their drama personally. Because you've done the inner work. You're not playing defense anymore. You're not explaining, proving, or justifying. You're choosing light over heaviness, presence over provocation. And that choice, that's what makes you powerful. So next time someone tries to push your buttons, don't react the way they expect. Don't give them your anger, your sadness, or your silence. Give them a smile, a joke, a reminder that their chaos doesn't reach your core. That's how you stay grounded. That's how you stay in control. That's how you rise, without ever having to raise your voice. Part 4. Know when to walk away. There's a moment in life that changes everything, not when you win an argument, not when you prove someone wrong, but when you quietly, firmly decide that you've had enough. That this time, you won't explain, you won't fix, you won't keep showing up for someone who keeps showing you that your presence is a convenience, not a gift. That moment is when you walk away. And it is one of the most powerful, most terrifying, most liberating decisions you'll ever make. Because walking away isn't just about leaving someone behind. It's about reclaiming yourself, your voice, your energy, your worth. The toxic people in your life won't make it easy. They'll apologize just enough to keep you tethered. They'll cry, blame, guilt trip, say, "You're giving up on me." And the truth is, part of you will wonder if you are. You'll wonder if walking away makes you cold, selfish, even cruel. But let me tell you what's really cruel: staying stuck in a cycle that eats away at your peace. Piece by piece, while calling it love, or loyalty, or sacrifice. I once had a friend who could light up a room with charm and charisma. But behind closed doors, they were a storm of need, drama, and manipulation. Every conversation revolved around their problems. Every gathering turned into a therapy session with me as the unpaid listener. And whenever I needed to talk, really talk, they brushed it aside. As if my pain was an interruption to their narrative. I convinced myself they were just struggling, just stressed, just going through a phase. So I stayed, I showed up, I gave them everything I had. Until one day, during one of the darkest chapters of my own life, I reached out. I needed someone to lean on. And their response? "That sucks. But I've got a lot on my plate right now." That was the breaking point. Not because it was the worst thing they ever said, but because it was the clearest moment of truth. They didn't see me. They didn't care. I was simply a background character in their story. That's when I knew I had to walk away. And I did. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. I didn't burn bridges or launch accusations. I just stepped back. Slowly, gently, but decisively. I stopped answering every call. I stopped justifying my distance. I stopped bleeding for someone who wouldn't even hand me a bandage. Walking away didn't mean I hated them. It meant I finally loved myself enough to stop shrinking for someone else's comfort. And that's what most people don't understand. Walking away isn't about anger. It's about clarity. It's the realization that your energy is too sacred to waste on someone who takes and takes but never gives. That your life isn't a rehabilitation center for people who don't want to heal. And yes, sometimes the person you have to walk away from is family. That makes it harder. But blood isn't a free pass to violate your boundaries. You can love people from a distance. You can wish them well, and still protect your space. Here's what happens when you walk away. At first, it hurts. There's silence where there used to be noise. There's doubt. There are memories. But then, there's peace. There's breath. There's space for joy to re-enter your life. You start to hear your own voice again. You remember what it's like to not carry someone else's chaos on your shoulders. You remember who you were before their dysfunction took up residence in your mind. And that memory, it becomes your compass. It leads you forward, step by step, into a life that's no longer defined by their drama, but by your strength. Walking away doesn't make you the villain in their story. It makes you the hero in your own. And one day, when you look back, you'll realize something powerful. You didn't just walk away from them. You walked toward something better. You walked toward peace, toward growth, toward the version of you who finally knew what they deserved. So if you're standing on that edge right now, unsure if you can take the leap, listen closely. You can. You must. Because staying stuck in what breaks you is not love. It's self-abandonment, and you were never meant to abandon yourself. Part 5. Surround yourself with uplifting people. After you've forgiven the past, drawn boundaries, disarmed with grace, and walked away from what drains you, what comes next is just as important. It's not enough to remove the toxic. You have to replace it with nourishment. Because healing in isolation is only half the journey. The other half is rediscovering what it feels like to be lifted. To be seen, to be valued, not for what you give, but for who you are. That's why you must choose, intentionally, courageously, to surround yourself with people who rise with you. Because when you're around those who elevate your spirit, everything shifts. Your energy, your self-belief, your direction in life. They become a mirror, not of your flaws, but of your potential. There was a time when I didn't know what that felt like. I had grown so used to one-sided relationships that I didn't even notice I was operating in survival mode, guarded, drained, constantly bracing for the next guilt trip or passive-aggressive jab. I thought that was normal. Until one day, I met someone who was the opposite of all that. They weren't loud or flashy or overly emotional. They were just kind, present, honest. They spoke encouragement with ease, offered support without strings, and celebrated my wins like they were their own. And in their presence, I noticed something strange. I didn't feel the need to defend myself. I didn't feel like I had to earn my place. I felt safe, uplifted, human. That's the kind of energy you need more of. People who don't drain your battery, but recharge it. People who don't just tolerate your dreams, but fuel them. People who challenge you to be better. Not through shame, but through belief. And no, you don't need 100 of them. Just a few. A strong handful of humans who show up for you with truth, consistency, and heart. But here's the part many overlook. If you want those people in your life, you have to be one of them too. You can't wait for uplifting energy to arrive. You have to be uplifting energy. Listen without judgment. Celebrate others without competition. Support them without keeping score. Because high-quality relationships aren't just found, they're built. And they're built by people who have the courage to lead with sincerity. The truth is, you become who you spend time with. If you surround yourself with cynics, critics, and complainers, that energy will seep into your language, your decisions, your outlook. But when you're around those who speak light into your life, who remind you of your worth without needing a crisis to do it, who inspire you to stay focused on the person you're becoming, you rise. Quietly, steadily, powerfully. You stop reacting, and you start creating. You stop doubting, and you start building. And the best part? Uplifting people won't just help you grow. They'll also hold space for you when you fall. They won't shame your missteps. They'll sit with you in the dark, remind you of your light, and walk with you back into the fire when you're ready. But sometimes, choosing this new circle means letting go of familiar faces. Friends you've known for years. Family you've kept around out of obligation. And yes, it can feel disloyal. But loyalty without reciprocity is how people stay stuck. Just because someone has history with you doesn't mean they have a future with you. You are allowed to evolve. You are allowed to raise your standards. You are allowed to say, I want more than survival, I want joy, depth, honesty, growth. And if someone can't meet you there, you don't have to force it. So ask yourself, who makes you feel lighter when they walk in the room? Who leaves you feeling more grounded, not more confused? Who listens without fixing, and challenges without shaming? That's your tribe. Protect those people. Show up for them. Build with them. Because in a world that often feels cold, connection is the fire that keeps us going. And when you finally surround yourself with people who uplift you, who see the best in you, who speak life into your future, you'll wonder why you ever settled for anything less. Part 6. Refuse to engage in their games. There's a kind of freedom that doesn't come from winning the argument. It doesn't come from finally saying that perfect comeback. It comes when you simply refuse to play. Toxic people thrive on chaos, not because they want to fix anything, but because they feed off the reaction. They bait you, provoke you, push just the right buttons to make you explode, defend, or explain, and the moment you take the bait, they've won, not because they were right, but because they pulled you into their storm. That's their game, and if you want to protect your peace, you need to stop stepping onto their board. Because the truth is, you don't owe anyone your energy, especially not someone who thrives on draining it. I remember dealing with someone in my life who had mastered the art of subtle sabotage. They rarely yelled, never confronted, but they knew exactly how to deliver comments laced with criticism disguised as concern. Wow, you look tired, are you okay? Or, must be nice to have so much time on your hands. Not everyone gets to relax like that. At first, I tried to clarify, to smooth things over, to prove I wasn't what they implied. I thought if I just explained it the right way, they'd stop, but they didn't, because they didn't want clarity. They wanted control. They wanted me emotionally tangled, constantly on edge, unsure of myself. That's when I realized, every time I engaged, I gave them exactly what they were looking for. So I stopped. The next time they threw one of those verbal hooks, I smiled and said, "You're entitled to your opinion," and walked away. No reaction, no defense, just calm, quiet detachment, and the look on their face? Pure frustration. Because when someone is addicted to stirring up conflict, your peace is their biggest obstacle. When you refuse to play, they lose their power. But here's what makes this hard. We're wired to respond, to defend, to be understood, especially when we feel attacked. But with toxic people, understanding isn't the goal, control is. So your job isn't to explain, it's to disengage. Refusing to engage doesn't mean you're passive. It means you're strategic. It means you've grown enough to recognize that your peace is more valuable than any petty back and forth. You start to see the patterns. You learn their moves, and instead of reacting, you rise, you pause, you walk away, or better yet, you say nothing at all. Because silence? That's power. That's choosing clarity over confusion. It's saying, I don't have to attend every drama I'm invited to. And let's be real, this isn't always easy. Sometimes, people will accuse you of being cold, distant, or dismissive. That's okay. Let them, because their discomfort with your boundaries is not your responsibility. You are not here to absorb someone else's unresolved trauma. You are not a sponge for their emotions. You're a human being with the right to protect your inner space. Every time you choose not to engage, you reinforce your self-respect. Every time you walk away from the bait, you step closer to freedom. So when the manipulation starts, when the guilt tripping begins, when they twist the story to make themselves the victim, stay calm. Stay grounded, and most importantly, stay silent. Let them spiral without your participation. Let them learn that their power doesn't work here anymore. And with time, they will either retreat or reveal themselves fully. Either way, you win, not by fighting, but by refusing to fight at all. That's not weakness, that's mastery. That's the quiet strength of someone who has stopped performing for the approval of people who never clapped for them anyway. So protect your energy. Don't hand it out like spare change. And when the game begins, remember, the most powerful move is not to play. Part 7. Stay focused on your purpose. In a world full of distractions, there is nothing more threatening to a toxic person than someone who is fully focused. Because a person who knows where they're going becomes immune to manipulation. They can't be pulled into drama, baited into meaningless debates, or lured off track by guilt or shame. And that's exactly what toxic people try to do: derail your direction. They throw emotional curveballs. They stir up storms. They create chaos, not because they don't see your light, but because they do. And it intimidates them. It reminds them of everything they've abandoned in themselves. Your focus becomes a mirror, and what they see in it, they can't stand. You have to understand this. Toxic people will almost never attack your strengths directly. Instead, they'll question your ambition, they'll downplay your goals, or they'll demand your attention at the exact moment you found your rhythm. Why are you working so hard? You've changed. Are you too good for us now? It's not a coincidence. It's a tactic, because the more focused you are, the less access they have. And the less access they have, the more they panic. Your detachment feels like abandonment. Your clarity feels like rejection. But here's the truth. They're not entitled to your distraction. They're not entitled to your energy just because you used to give it freely. I used to work in an environment filled with subtle toxicity, gossip, undermining, backhanded compliments. At first, I tried to fit in. I participated in small talk, tried to be diplomatic, to keep the peace. But the more I engaged, the more I lost sight of myself. Hours spent defending my decisions, explaining my intentions, or simply recovering from emotional exhaustion. Until one day, I stopped. I made a choice. I decided to stop reacting and start creating. I set a goal, not just professionally, but personally. I asked myself, what kind of life do I want to build? What kind of person do I want to be? And from that moment on, I let those questions guide me. I started spending my time with intention. I began protecting my mornings. I worked with purpose, moved in silence, and guarded my focus like it was oxygen. And something amazing happened. The noise faded. The drama started to bypass me. The people who once tried to pull me in gave up. Because I stopped feeding the fire. I stopped being available for nonsense. And more importantly, I became addicted, not to stress, not to chaos, but to progress, to clarity, to peace. That's what staying focused on your purpose does. It transforms you from someone who reacts into someone who builds. And that's when your life starts changing, not because the toxic people disappear overnight, but because their influence shrinks. Their power dissolves in the presence of your discipline. Here's what I've learned. When you're deeply focused, deeply connected to your why, you naturally begin to say no to anything that doesn't align. Not with anger, not with resistance, but with quiet certainty. You say no to the arguments that go nowhere. No to the invitations that pull you backward. No to the people who only show up when they need something. And in that space, those sacred no's, you create room for something greater. Real work, real healing, real joy, real connection. So if you feel like you're drowning in noise, like your energy is constantly hijacked by things and people that don't matter, take a moment to step back. Revisit your purpose. Reconnect with the version of yourself that's trying to emerge. Write it down, see it clearly, and build a life that protects it like it's gold, because it is. Your purpose is your compass. It's your anchor when the world tries to spin you in circles. When someone tries to trigger you, remind yourself, this doesn't serve where I'm going. When someone tries to guilt you, ask yourself, does this pull me closer to or farther from the life I'm building? And yes, some people will fall away. Let them. Your growth will expose their comfort zones. Your silence will disrupt their chaos. But that's not your burden to carry. That's their lesson to face. You are not selfish for choosing focus. You are not heartless for guarding your time. You are simply becoming someone who values their future more than familiar dysfunction. So stay focused, stay grounded, stay hungry, because the people who once doubted you will either disappear, or they'll start watching from a distance, wondering how you got so far ahead. And when they ask, you can tell them the truth. You stopped playing their game, and started playing your own. Part 8. Avoid gossiping about them. Let's be honest, when someone hurts you, betrays you, or drains you, it's tempting to talk about it. It feels justified. It feels like release, like justice. And in the moment, gossip can feel almost therapeutic, a way to reclaim your voice, to share the truth, to get validation. But here's what you need to understand. Gossip isn't healing. It's a trap disguised as relief. Because when you talk about someone who wronged you behind their back, you're not moving on. You're still orbiting around their energy. You're still letting them dictate your emotional state. And the more you talk about them, the more you keep them alive in your mind. That's not freedom. That's bondage by another name. I've been there. I've been in rooms where the toxicity of one person became the main topic of conversation. We'd rehash the same stories, the same frustrations, over and over again, sometimes laughing, sometimes raging, always circling the same emotional drain. And for a while, it felt good. It felt like solidarity, like we were getting something off our chests. But one day, I left one of those conversations feeling worse. Not better, heavier, not lighter. And I realized that talking about toxic people wasn't making me stronger, it was keeping me stuck. I was giving away my peace in tiny, invisible pieces every time I repeated their name, every time I relived their actions, every time I allowed their shadow to take up space in my day. So I made a decision, a difficult, but necessary one. I stopped talking about them. I stopped using my voice to carry their drama. Instead, I redirected that energy toward rebuilding myself, toward focusing on the kind of person I wanted to be, not the kind of person they had been. And in doing so, I noticed something incredible. My clarity returned. My mind quieted. My conversations became richer, deeper, more alive, because I wasn't speaking from a place of bitterness anymore. I was speaking from wholeness. Avoiding gossip isn't about pretending someone didn't harm you. It's about refusing to let that harm shape who you are. It's choosing to rise above without denying what happened. And yes, it's hard, especially when the injustice is real, when the damage is personal, when you feel like the world needs to know what they did. But here's the deeper truth. Your healing is not dependent on anyone else's awareness. You don't need an audience to validate your experience. You don't need whispers behind closed doors to feel justified. What you need is peace. What you need is to stop replaying the same wound and start focusing on your own recovery. There are healthier ways to process pain. Talk to someone you trust, someone mature, who won't fan the flames. Write it out, reflect privately, vent, yes, but don't build a shrine to your bitterness. Don't let your conversations become a shrine to their bad behavior. Because every time you speak about them, you're building them a seat at your table. And they don't belong there anymore. When you stop gossiping, you take back control. You shift from victim to leader. You send a clear message to yourself and to the world. I am no longer defined by what they did. I am defined by how I respond. Gossip keeps you chained to the lowest version of the story. Integrity lifts you into the next chapter. And when others try to pull you into the loop, when they bring up the person you've left behind, you don't have to take the bait. You can respond with quiet strength. You can say, that's not something I want to dwell on anymore. And move on. That's not avoidance. That's evolution. Let people wonder why you're so at peace. Let them be confused by your calm. Let your silence speak louder than your outrage ever could. Because when you stop gossiping, you stop giving away your power. You close the door, gently but firmly, and you walk into a life that doesn't revolve around pain, but around purpose. At the end of the day, you don't need to change the world to reclaim your peace. You just need to change what you allow into your world. You have the power to forgive without forgetting, to walk away without hating, to protect your energy without explanation. You have the right to build a life that feels good on the inside, even if it looks unfamiliar to the outside. And every time you choose calm over chaos, clarity over confusion, peace over performance, you're writing a better story, one you'll be proud to live in. So thank you for walking this path with me today. Thank you for choosing growth, even when it's uncomfortable. And thank you for letting the Chill Stoic be a part of your journey towards strength, silence, and self-mastery. Until next time, stay grounded, stay gentle, and above all, stay true to your peace.